Hi, Girish.
Hey guys, am I audible?
Yes, Girish, you're audible.
Okay, so far what I was I was speaking. You were able to listen that?
No, no.
Oh, so sorry. Okay. Um, okay, I need to repeat everything again. Okay. So I was speaking about what we have covered so far. Say VM, VMSS, Azure App Services, and within Azure App Services, web app, API app, web jobs, mobile apps. We discussed about the container Kubernetes. We discussed about the virtual machine versus container. We discussed about Azure container instances. We discussed about Azure Kubernetes services. We discussed about Azure functions. Right now, I uh, I forgot to tell you that um, about the logic apps. So logic app are nothing but covered in the workflows, right? So we discussed about the Azure workflow. Okay. So when we say Azure workflow, when we say Azure workflow, basically we are talking about logic app. Okay. So what is the difference between between functions and workflows? Okay. That we could not able to discuss yesterday. Okay. So let us discuss that. So Azure functions and logic app. Functions are a function and logic app both create complex orchestration. Okay, which means a collection of function or steps that are executed to accomplish a particular task, right? So even if you are having functions, it performs some task. In case of logic app, it performs some task. and both are like event driven. But in case of function, your code, I mean, you design the code, okay? But in case of logic app, it is a GUI based application. So you define a workflow that how your flow happens, and in that you call different functions, okay? So that something can happen when a particular flow happen, right? So therefore, in your orchestration, you have a mix and match of both your functions and your logic app. But in your, what is the difference between function and logic app? Is that normally functions are stateless. Okay, so the difference between, if I'll say the difference between functions and logic app, what is that? The difference between function and logic app. So your, as I said, that functions are code based, okay, but logic app are GUI based. So you have your GUI and that you call and then you perform some action. Okay. Next is that functions are normally stateless because you call a function when an event happens. For example, if some data is coming to some shared drive, suppose you wrote your function which picks up that data. So in case if the data is not available, function will not do anything. And it picks up the data when when that data is available. So when something happens, then your function triggers. Okay. However, in case of logic app are stateful. I have given, okay. For example, in case if you are dialing a phone, so before you dial the phone, you can hear that your phone, your landline phone is like having a kind of ringtone. The moment you pick up the receiver, you can hear a kind of ringtone. So that, a kind of tone, right? It is not a ringtone, but the moment you pick up the phone, you hear a tone, and that tone indicates that phone is not dead. It is in the working condition. Now, when you dial some number in that phone, you hear a dialing tone. So at that time, it is in the dialing state. When when you dial that number, that your PSTN sends some signal, and that along with that number to the third party to whom you are calling, right? And then you can listen the ringtone at other side, that yes, that your phone is ringing, right? So all these are different states. So you do something, then something happens, then you get the acknowledgement in some ways. That is how your flow happens. And when your flow happens in that ways, always it is in a particular state, whether the phone is ringing, whether the phone is hanged, or whether you are dialing, or whether you are yet dial and the phone is live, right? So every time there is a state of that particular flow. So therefore, the logic apps, when you design, it is always stateful. Now, in case of function, it is a code first, which means that your functions works based on some code. But so in case if you don't have code, then there is no meaning of that function, right? But in case of logic app, you design the flow first. So here you do the design first. Okay, so it is a kind of declarative. So you design your flow first. Okay, you don't need to write your code. You design first, and then when you design it, then you call that particular code from either from functions or from different or from different things, right? So you can call different functions within that, but you design first. So in case of function, this is code first. In case of logic app, it is design first. Now, in case of function, um, function, it it is having I mean, in case if you are talking about connectivity, it is built-in binding types, which means that write code for custom binding. So when you want to bind a function with another function, when you bind, when you want to bind a function with a particular application, you need to, write your code or use the API to bind it. Okay. In case of the logic app, the large collection of connectors, enterprise integrations, which is packed for B2B scenarios. So in this case, build custom connectors. So when you are connecting a logic app, you that it is part of that workflow. You have those things. You don't need to call, you don't need to call a API, or you don't need to do the custom binding. It is as a part of the flow. It is there itself, right? When you are creating a function, it is you write the code for activity function. So all the you write the code to perform that particular action. In case of logic app, the large collection of ready-made actions are available, so you don't need to do the custom thing. So in case of logic app, you are calling the ready-made things. In case of function, you do the custom code writing. In case of logic app, when you are you use, say, Azure application insights. But in case of logic app, you can you can build that using Azure portal. Okay. For management of the function, you use the REST API, the Visual Studio, or some in some ways, right? But in case of logic app, you you can use several different things. Say portal. Okay. So portal is your GUI based. You can also use, if you want, the REST API. If you want, you can also use the PowerShell. You can also use the Visual Studio, right? So you have several different type of options which you can use when you are using logic app. Okay. So therefore function and logic, functions and logic app both are like useful, but it has different things. So in case of the logic app, it all everything which is already there, the built-in functions or ready-made functions or whatever, right? But in case of function, you write everything from scratch. You write it and then you use it. So everything is custom built. Okay. So that is the purpose of the function. We earlier we discussed about the the serverless compute, and then we discussed about various type of serverless, right? Then we discussed about Azure Logic App today. Now next, as a part of compute, which I missed, was the virtual desktop. Okay. What is virtual desktop? Anyone has worked on Citrix? Anyone? So in order to understand your virtual function, sorry, your virtual desktop, you can think of that it is just like Citrix. So what you do is, so in that case, what you are doing is virtual desktop. You are, in case if you wanted to utilize your cloud function remotely, okay, in that case, you are using virtual desktop. So it is just like a Citrix. What is the use case of it? The use case is that suppose you're, you are working in an organization and your employees wanted to connect with your, some application. Okay. So you can, over the cloud. Okay. Then you can use Azure, Azure Virtual Desktop. So it provides the best user experience, and it also ensure the enhanced security, right? So the moment I'm giving you the example of Citrix, I think it is that makes your life easy, because now you understand that what is the purpose of it. okay, and how this virtual desktop is is being used, right? Now, what are the key feature of Azure virtual desktop? One is the simplified management, right? So n number of people can access it. So it has the multi-session environment. Number of users from using different session can access it. Then it also has the multi the performance management, in the sense that n number of user can simultaneously access the same desktop, but nobody feel like a kind of performance problem or anything. So it is, it is good at performance, and it is even better than a normal Citrix environment. Because when we are creating a Citrix environment, we are installing a Citrix, which is a third-party client. Okay. In case of Azure, the users have the freedom to connect to the Azure Virtual Desktop with any device over the internet. They use a Azure Virtual Desktop client to connect to their Windows desktop application. So there is no limit that if you, in case if you are having your mobile, with the help of mobile, you can also access the virtual desktop. Even if you are having your laptop, tablet, PC, whatever, just you need internet and and some device to connect to that particular Azure virtual desktop. Okay, so therefore it is, we can say it is a better form of existing Citrix concept, right? But it also provide a well secured architecture, in the sense that users sign in into the Azure virtual desktop, and that sign in is that sign in won't take much time. It's fast enough, because user profile are containerized by using FS logic, right? So using FS logic, you can sign in very fast. At sign in the user profile, container is dynamically attached to the computing environment. The user profile is immediately available and appear in the system exactly like a native user profile. So always it create a kind of a separate instance of that particular desktop, okay, so that a user can access that particular instance, and nobody will be able to use somebody else instance. So that is the beauty of it. So okay, normally what happens is, suppose you have a laptop, you can create n number of users. So suppose I can I can create my user ID in the same laptop. Now some other friend can also come and join, and I can create, in case if I have the admin right, I can create his user ID and password also. He can also access it in case if I'm not using that laptop, right? So but so that facility is available even in your laptop also, but nobody can access it simultaneously, because it is a single device. I can use it, and then my friend can use it. In case of Citrix, it allows you to connect the user simultaneously, but you need to install some third-party software, and it has a limitation that you can't access it using any any device. But with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can access it just by using a HTML5 client. So there is no there is no other restriction. In case if you have HTML5 web client, you will be able to use your virtual desktop. And the moment user logs in, your login process is very fast. It is not troublesome, because each time the moment the user logs in, your containers gets up, right? And then your your authentication and everything happens, right? And the country that containerization is is happening using FS logic. Okay. So there is no problem that, okay, even if 1,000 users are accessing it, okay, so each one has its own container. They are saving their content within their own container. They are accessing that environment or that instance within their own container. Nobody can access anybody else's data or anybody else's profile or whatever, or your application. Okay. And it has a very tight role-based access controls. So thereby, Azure Virtual Desktop is also a very good feature as a part of your Azure Compute Services. Next is, in case if you already have some Microsoft licenses, for example, you have say license of say Microsoft 365 or say Windows 10 or say whatever, right? So in case if you have that license, you can utilize that license. So you will be able to use that Azure Virtual Desktop without any additional cost. So your existing license can work in your, in case if you are using for your personal use, right? So that way it is very good. Okay. So by this way, we have covered various things in Azure Compute. So any question so far for Azure Compute? Any question, any problem? If you don't have question, please write no. What is FS logic? Okay. Okay. So when we are using such type of terms, currently we are into the fundamentals. We don't want to dig down into this thing, but yes, at a high level, FS logic is a term which is used for getting up your container. Okay, so in case if you have, as I said, for Azure, particularly for Azure Virtual Desktop, the moment you log in case if you have a existing container, that container should get a signal to get it up. Okay, in case if you don't have the container, but you have the right authentication, right, then it creates that it helps you to create a container so that you will be able to set it up. Okay, so that is how it helps you. Okay. Okay. Now we will come to next, and that is Azure storage. So Azure provide you various things. Okay. So now we will talk about yesterday. I think we have also covered at a high level the Azure networking, right? Okay, but we will discuss about this networking in more detail. Maybe in our future class. But right now we need to discuss about Azure storage, okay, which I mentioned you yesterday that today we are going to discuss that. Okay, so now, okay, yesterday we discussed about Azure Blob storage, Azure file storage, Azure queue, Azure table, Azure disk. Okay, these are the things, these are the 5 things we discussed yesterday. Next, which is not like, but we will also cover it, but it is not part of that types, but we will cover it. That is Azure Blob access tiers. Okay. So we will discuss right now. We will, we will discuss about these things. Okay. Azure Blob, Azure File, Queue, and Disk. Okay. Now, first of all, before we go into these type of services, right, we need to understand what is Azure storage. So before you go into the, before you start using any of these different types, you need to create an account that is known as Azure storage account. Okay. Now, Azure storage account you need to create. If you don't have the Azure storage account, you can't utilize any of these. So you need to create your Azure storage account first. Now, how you can create it? You can create it using Azure Portal, PowerShell, or Azure CLI. Anyways, so there are always, whenever you want to create anything, you can use any of these methods, okay, Portal, PowerShell, and CLI. Now, once you have that Azure storage account in place, then you will be able to use your Azure storage. You can, you can easily access your Azure, your Azure storage. Okay. Now, we discussed about yesterday what is blob storage. What is, that is binary large object. Okay. Now, a storage account. When we are saying that we are creating a storage account, what is the benefit of it? So normally we have in our laptop, say, hard disk. Until we will not have access to our laptop, we will not be able to access that hard disk. Correct? Now, in case of Azure storage account, because it is based on the cloud, it is not essential that you need to have a VM, then only you will be able to access that data. Sorry, that storage. In case if you have the Azure storage, you can connect it. In case if you're connecting it within the VM, of course you need to go through that particular operating system, and then you need to use it. But in case of the Azure storage profile, you can directly also access it. So in case of your Azure storage account, you can access it through HTTP or HTTPS. So by using these protocols, you will be able to access it. Now, Azure storage often, Azure storage offer several types of storage account, as we discussed, right? But all of these storage accounts, like the blob, the file share, the queues, the tables, etc., everything can be accessed using a simple HTTP or HTTPS. So you don't have to, it gives you a lot of flexibility. Okay. Now, in case of there are different type of blob storage, right? But the main two category of the of the storages are the standard storage and the premium storage. So when I'm saying standard storage, then again there are different type of storage. Say general purpose V2 storage, um, V1 storage, which was like the old storage. Okay, now nowadays the popular storage is general purpose V2 storage. Now, so Azure, whether it is Azure or AWS or any of these cloud provider, keep on giving you different versions of different things, because based on the market need and all those things. Okay, but in case if you broadly categorize the things, we can categorize it in two ways. One is your standard storage and one is your premium storage. Okay, now the we will discuss later on. Maybe whenever we will have a need that, okay, and that how different type of storages are available. In case if you wanted to have a, say for example, data warehousing solution, right, you can use the or in case if you wanted to use your simple databases, or if you wanted to use your disk, So depending on your different needs, different industry need, Azure provide different type of storage. Okay. Now, when you and also for your performance. Now, Azure, your disk, whenever you are talking about the basic storage type, normally it comes into the two fashion. One is your HDD and one is your SSD for the form, which is so HDD is a slow device in the sense that it has low cost but it is little slow. So in case if you wanted to use it for your personal use, you can use your HDD device. In case if you wanted to use it for your official purpose, you can use your SSD device for the low latency and high throughput. Okay. Next, um, you can use your account type if you want a storage account that support both server message block and NFS file share. So yesterday somebody has asked me about the SAN storage and all that, right? We will discuss about several different things such as the what is SMB, which is server message block, what is NFS file share, what is what is SAN storage, and all those things we will discuss about all these things so that you will have a better understanding of it. But just we need to just bear with me because we are first of all we are trying to cover up everything fundamental or or everything basic, and then we will go for the next. Okay. Now, but in case if whatever I am explaining, in case it's not clear to you, then you can ask your question. Okay. Now, next is the disk storage. Okay, so we discussed about the file storage. Sorry, we discussed about the blob storage that you can store any type of data. We discussed about file storage that you can, it is just like a file server and you can, access your file. So, it is like a, centralized location which, where in which you will, you will be able to store your files or access your file for your official purposes. And then we discussed about, the queue storage. Where we discussed about for the messaging, right? We discussed about the table storage for non-relational databases. We discussed about the disk storage, which is simply just a just as a disk. Now, now let us discuss about in detail for the Azure Blob storage. So whatever be the type of it, whether it is a blob storage or any other, you definitely need to have your storage account. In case if you don't have the storage account, you will not be able to use it. Now we talk about Azure Blob storage in little detail. Azure Blob storage is an object storage solution for the cloud. It can store massive amount of data such as text and binary data. Azure Blob storage is unstructured, meaning that there are no restriction on the type of the load or the type of the data it can hold. So you can store any type of data. Now, if you want, you can have this. Basically, it is used for serving images or documents directly to a browser. So, particularly, it is useful. Suppose, in case if you wanted to have a kind of, if you wanted to create a kind of profile which deals with a lot of pictures, right? For example, Facebook. So people keep on uploading different pictures and their status report. Their status, right? So from where those, where it is storing such type of data, your pictures, your videos, your clips, right? How it is being managed? For example, your Facebook data or your Instagram data or like that, right? Which has a massive, it require, and you know that the text file require less size. In case if your official document require a less size, but in case if you wanted to have a this type of work where I mean, which stores your videos or your files, etc., it require a large storage, because one file which is like the JPG or PNG or whatever, it takes a lot of size as compared to your text document, right? So next is that you can store file for the distributed access, so there is no limit to it. So whatever you want, you can use it. So you can use it for your images or document directly to a browser. You can also document it. I mean, you can also store the file for distributed access. When I say distributed access, which means there is no limit. Anywhere in the world you can use it. Okay, and you can access it from any device. Yeah, I mean, like your mobile or your laptop or whatever. You can have the streaming videos and audios. You can have storing data for backup. So uh, for for that purpose also you can use for your backup purpose, right? You can also restore, and you can also it for disaster recovery for your DR purpose. You can also use it for your archiving purpose. You can also use it for your uh, you know your analysis. Suppose you are having your storing data for analysis by an by an on-premise or Azure hosted services. You can use it. You can store any data, right? And even particularly for virtual machine, you can store the data up to 8 TB size. Okay, so that is a very big storage which you can use, particularly even in case of your general storage. Okay, so that is how you will be able to use it. Okay, so for a virtual machine, you can store up to 8 TB of data for a virtual machine. Now, in case you wanted to go for this, maybe you will hear about the Azure Data Lake Storage. Okay, so in case if you wanted to, if you are using the blob storage, you can also extend it and use it for the Azure Data Lake Storage for enterprise big data analysis solution. So in case, uh, if your need is for the big data analysis, you can even use the data lakes. So when you use your Azure Blob, whenever you wanted to have an application which is where random type of data, whether it is a file or whether it is a official document, or sometime it is a video or audio or your text images, sorry, your images or whatever, right? So there is no categorization of that data. Whatever be the data, it doesn't matter. It will be able to store it up. Okay. So in case if you wanted to use any random data, you can use the Azure Blob. In case if you wanted to access the data from anywhere, that if that is your use case, you can use Azure Blob. In case if you wanted to build an enterprise data lake, right, for big data analysis, you can use Azure Blob. So this is how, and you can utilize up to 8 TB capacity of your data with a VM. Okay, so that is the beauty of your Azure Blob. Okay, now we will talk about files, Azure file. Okay, what is the use of it? So Azure file storage, what is the use of it? Okay, so the use of the Azure file is basically used for lift and shift type of migrations. So in case if you wanted to migrate from your on-premise to cloud, you it will be easier to use Azure file storage. So many on-premise applications use the file share. Azure File make it easier to migrate those applications that share data to Azure. If you mount the Azure File share to the same drive letter that the on-premise application uses, the part of your application that accesses the file share should work with a minimal changes, right? So for example, the analogy, if I'm giving you, for example, if you are having the C drive, you are having D drive, right? So whenever you are accessing your files within a, for a file, for a file share, you access it on a disk. And when you are accessing on a disk, you are accessing using a drive letter. Now you wanted to migrate those everything that is on premise and which is stored in, say, C drive or D drive or whatever be the path, etc. You wanted to replicate as it is in your Azure. At that time, you should not be using the blob. Why? Because blob has a different concept. It do not have a concept of the drive letters, right? So if you wanted to have, and your application is normally accessing the data with the help of some hard-coded path, that okay, from this path it need to access this, this data, so that it will be easier for you to, so that your application can understand that yes, your data lies here, and you on so and so path, and from this path, the data need to be built. So the way your application is designed, that has a close association with your disk. So in case if you wanted to, when you're transferring that on-premise data to the cloud, you need a same type of setup. And when you are going in the cloud, you don't, you need minimal changes, right? So in order to do that, then you use your Azure file storage. Next is that configuration files. So what is the use of your Azure file storage is, it can also keep your storage, it can keep your configuration files on a file share and access those from multiple VMs. So all the configuration files, which are basically you are using for your security purpose, because in case if somebody will access your configuration, it can play with your data like anything, and you don't want that to happen. So in that case, you can keep your storage file on a file share, and that can be accessed through multiple VMs. So tools and utilities used by multiple developer in a group can be can be stored on a file share, ensuring that everybody can find them and that they can use the same version. So particularly for configuration management point of view, you can also use the file share, right? So you can suppose multiple developers are working on on the same copy. So then they can use the file share and they can create their code or their data or whatever, right? And they are putting that at the single location, and then somebody else can also access it or use it, right? Next is you can write data to a file share and process or analyze the data later. For example, you might want to do this, say, for a diagnostic logs, your matrices, your crash dump. So in such type of cases, when you are having your matrix, you wanted to generate your matrices, you wanted to have your, store your crash dump so that you can analyze it in, afterwards. You wanted to keep your diagnostic data. For that purpose also, you can use file share. So it is used for configuration files. It is used for your file share. It is used for, it is used for your crash dump or your, to generate the measures and matrices or diagnostic logs. It can be used for simple lift and shift migration. Okay, because in that case, your application do not require much changes. Otherwise, you keep on changing your path location, and that will be really cumbersome for you. Okay, so in that, I mean, in all such cases, you can, I mean, you are able to use your file share. You can use it for configuration management point of view. I mean, in case if your utility is something like that. Okay, you can also use it as it is a shared drive, so you can access your data. Okay, so for all these things, I mean, you will be able to use it. You want to replicate, and when we are talking about, say, NAS, which is network access, I mean, protocol. So with the help of your, I mean, network access, I mean, you can access. I mean, you wanted to replicate or supplement on-premise file servers or the NAS devices. Then also you can, I mean, you will be able to use it. Okay, you will be able to access the Azure file using the server message block protocol, which is the SMB protocol. And with the help of it, you can access it either using Windows, Linux, or Mac OS. So there is no restriction that you can't use your operating system. I mean, you can't use a particular operating system to access your Azure file. So you can use it either Windows, Linux, or Mac. So there is no as such restriction. Okay, now so in a way we can say that it can be used for your I mean, depending on your use case, you can use it for your distributed application. You can also use it for a centralized application. So here your use case is different. Um, unlike a Facebook, right? Here your purpose is totally different. In case of Blob, the use cases like your Instagram or your Facebook or like that, where you don't have a type of file you can access. I mean, put any file. In case of the files share, you have a particular type of file. Okay. Now the file share, but everywhere, I mean, wherever you will be using your Azure file, you will be using it using SMB protocol, and you will be able to access it. Whereas your blob storage, I mean, was using the HTTP or HTTPS protocol. It was not using SMB protocol. Okay. SMB, that is the name of the protocol. It is not SME. Okay. So that is the name of the protocol. So there are different protocol in our IT industry, right? So we just, I mean, we just need to say, I mean, understand that, okay, which protocol is used for which type of access, so that it will be easier for us. I mean, I mean, and basically, I mean, it is being used by, the developers, and developers should know that, okay, it is being used by, I mean, which protocol and what are the properties of it. Now, next is SMB, okay, which is server message block. Server message block is the name of the protocol. As an architect, users need to know that, okay, which protocol is being used for which type of device. Okay. Now, next is now we will discuss about Azure Queue. So, what is Azure Queue Storage? The Azure Queue service is used to store and retrieve messages. We discussed a summary of it yesterday. Now we will, okay, so I think we are top of the hour, but yes, since some of the time has gone, so it's fine. I will cover it for next 10 minutes. Okay, so Azure Queue. But in case if you have some specific question, or if you are not able to understand something, you can let me know. Then I will cover cover that. Otherwise, I mean, we will move for the queue. Okay, so I assume no question. Now we are going for the queue. Okay, a message store. Okay, so basically Azure queue service is used to store and retrieve messages. Queue messages can be up to 64 KB in size. And there are a lot of, so this is a standard always when we are saying 64 KB in size. This is the type of message. Okay, so okay, so 64 KB in size, and queues can contain millions of messages. Queues are generally used to store list of messages to be processed asynchronously. You can send your message and then it get delivered to your third party at any point in time. You don't care. You just know that, okay, you send that message and you can rest assured that message will get delivered. In case if it will not get delivered within a stipulated period of time, then you should get an acknowledgement back, so that you will be able to deliver it. You will be able to send it again. So the analogy is your mobile messages. Okay, so queues are generally used to messages to be processed asynchronously. For example, say you want you want your customer to be able to upload pictures, and you want to create thumbnails for each picture. You would you could have your customer wait for you to create to create a thumbnail while uploading the picture. An alternative would be to use the queue. When the customer finishes their upload, write a message to the queue, then have an Azure function retrieve the message from the queue and create the thumbnail. So all the picture which your customer is loading, that is going in a queue. And then so it is just their metadata. Okay, and then you are accessing your those files, and then you can create a thumbnail from that queue. And each you can keep picking up those parameters, and then you can start then you can access your those pictures from another device, and then you will be able to create the thumbnail, say using a Python application. Okay, so in this way you are storing the messages in a queue, and then you will be able to use it. Okay, now another so we discussed about two analogy. One is, for example, your messages which are which you are sending over your mobile or whatever. Another and analogy is that when you are using it with your for your, say, thumbnail creation, right? So next is, again, which protocol can be used for to access it? That is HTTP and HTTPS, just like your blob. Okay, so here you are using the HTTP or HTTPS protocol for this. Okay, now service. Okay, now there are two type of queues. Okay, one is the service bus queue. Okay, that is little different. Okay, so when we are talking about, one is the storage queue and service bus queue. So these are the two type of queue. Storage queue are part of the Azure storage. They allow you to store large number of messages. Okay, when you're talking about the storage queue, you can access messages from anywhere in the world via authentication. Via an authenticated call using HTTP or HTTPS. A queue message can be used for 64 KB in size, and you can have a millions of the messages up to a total capacity limit to a storage account. So whatever be the capacity of your storage account, it doesn't matter what is that, whatever you are purchasing. Till that capacity, you will be able to store your messages. So you can keep your millions of messages in that. Queues are commonly used to create a backlog of work to process asynchronously. So you are creating a backlog of work and then you are processing it. It is not needed that you are doing it synchronously, which means that immediately you need to process it. You are just creating a backlog and then you are processing it one by one. Your application is taking one by one and it is processing. Okay. Another concept is service bus queue. So as a part of the broader Azure messaging infrastructure, we are using the service bus queue. It is not part of the storage queue, but people get confused when when they think that, okay, the moment they see the word queue. So the queue is, one is the storage queue and one is the service bus queue. We will discuss about once we will discuss maybe quite later, during our advanced course, when we will discuss about the Azure service bus queue. Okay, that support the queuing, publishing, subscribe, and more advanced integration pattern that are designed to integrate application or application component that can span multiple communication protocol, different type of data contract. There, different type of trust domain or network environment. So all those things are part of your your service bus queue. Okay. Now, next is we will discuss about now the next thing which we are going to discuss is about the Azure table storage. I think we are top of the hour, and perhaps we will discuss this later on. But okay, so far we have covered so many different things, and now you understand that as a part, in case if somebody is speaking about, say, data lakes, about, say, blob storage, about, say, file storage, about, say, queue storage, about different type of what your virtual desktop, your functions, your flows, your Kubernetes, your containers, your machine, your resources. So now you understand lot of things. So in case if you have any quick question, you will be able to ask. Otherwise, we will close the call.
Can you repeat the full form of Azure first as well as this Azure Service Bus Queue? The functionality of Service Bus Queue.
Okay, so the functionality of the service bus queue is to, in a simple words, it is used for a bigger construct, in the sense that storage queue is only for your storage. As I said, that for your backlog, and you can create a backlog and then you can process it. Service bus queues are used for large construct. For example, if you are using, say, up to it has the capacity up to, say, 80 GB. Okay, so up to 80 GB, like as I said, for the service bus queue, you are sending messages, and that message size should be 64 KB, right? And you have the whatever be the size of your of your disk, accordingly you will be able to fill up the millions of messages in that. Service bus queue is for integrating your large services. You might have heard about the SOA architecture, right? So when we are using SOA architecture, we are integrating too many different applications. It is not just the storage. So there we are using the service bus queue. Okay. I hope this is clear, right?
Okay, so architecture in the sense service-oriented architecture, you mean?
Yeah. So anything when it is larger, when number of applications are integrating, and you are dealing with that, so it is wherever your services are, number of services are involved, right? So industry has shifted towards the providing providing your from a from a I would say from a sorry. Industry is moving towards providing services, like everything is as a service. For example, software as a service, application as a service, your platform as a service, your number of services. In case of SUA architecture, you are having the number of things are integrating. You are creating a middleware which is integrating so many different things, right? So basically, your service bus queue is for your to enable those, large number of services.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we need to close up the call because it's like we don't have any time. Okay, so thank you everyone for attending this. I think today, how many people have attended out of 16? 8. That is ridiculous. So I'm going to remove the people, those who are not going to join consistently. I will remove them from this batch. And I will first send a message to everyone, and I will also remove them from LinkedIn as well. So I request you to join, the meeting. Otherwise, there is no point. 16 members are within our batch, and only few are joining. Because they understand that, okay, once I'll upload the video, then perhaps they can access it in in their free time. That is not good. So perhaps I will stop uploading also the videos. Okay, so anyways, thank you so much for your consistent joining. Like I can see Ravi is consistent. I can see, I think, Sapna, Arpita, yes. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Sapna. So, please join consistently.
Me too,
Parvez,
Girish.
okay, Parvez.
What's here?
Yes, Devashri.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, great. So, Sapna, Parvez, Devashri. I think Hira also joined. But I think she missed one or two, I think. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you,
you
Girish.
uploaded the recording so far? I was on vacation for 2 days.
Okay. I request you to, be
Yeah.
consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.